Hey buddy, what's up? UltraMag64 here, and welcome to my games of 2015! Keep in mind that I am one, while very amazing, still only one person, and I can only play so many games in a year. I also can't afford every game that's released in a year's time. So if you feel like there's a game that's deserving of this list, then leave it in the comments down below and I'll check it out. But in the meantime, here are my personal games of 2015. Keep in mind that for them to qualify for this game, they can't be in early access or beta. They have to be completely finished. Secondly, I had to have beaten the game or put a significant amount of hours into the game. We're talking 40, 60, 200 plus hours. There'll be a separate video with the list of games that I didn't quite finish but still loved every minute of playing through. But without further ado, let's get this list on the roll. Keep in mind these are in no particular order. Since I don't rate games, they're just kind of strung about in the order that I remembered them in. Stop me if you haven't heard this before. Adventures of Pip is a 2D pixelated indie platformer. But what makes Pip neat and unique is he has the ability to change the amount of pixels he's made up of. You start off as a single pixel. This form allows you to fit into small places and grants you a rather floaty descent when you jump. Then there's 8 Pip, who can wall jump and punch his pixel foes. Finally, there's 16 Pip, who comes with a sword, but all those pixels weigh him down, so he's not as nimble as his other forms. In a world full of tough-as-nails platformers, Adventures of Pip finds a way to be challenging while also being easy to not scare away those of us who aren't the best at jumping and shooting. However, for those of you who enjoy a bit of challenge, each level has 3 pixelated villagers, hidden throughout the level for you to find. These range from obvious to quite well hidden. You might be wondering why random villagers are hiding all across the land. Well, in the story of Pip, an evil queen kidnapped the princess because she possesses the ability to use the Block Force, and she'll use this power to make everyone equal, except for her. This kinda left me conflicted. I didn't exactly hate the queen. I mean, everyone in the kingdom comes off as pixel prejudice, and I really questioned if I could join the dark side of this rather simple story. While Adventures of Pip might be too easy for some, I rather enjoyed it. If you're looking for something akin to the newer Mario Brothers titles, with an interesting twist, I say don't be a square, give Adventures of Pip a shot. Blendoku is one of those games I highly recommend any artist, regardless of experience level, plays. Not only is it a great, relaxing puzzle game, but it will also teach you gradient shades of color. As levels get harder and harder, they'll bring in more unique colors and slight variations in shade, making the player think before acting. And while the advertisements are few and far between, although I'll admit they do take you out of the experience, and the microtransactions are a little bit steep. However, I will counter that argument by saying that you'll probably never use them. But microtransactions and advertisements aside, Blendoku is still a good game. Whether you're an artist looking to learn something new about the color palette, or you're looking for a good puzzle game that takes advantage of your right brain, I recommend you break out your painting brush and give Blendoku a try. How great is Fallout 4? Bethesda once again proves that they are the kings of the open world RPG. Or are they? Well, I'm sad to say that, considering the steep competition that Bethesda is up against this year, Fallout 4, while still a good game, and one of my favorites of the year, just doesn't seem to have the same Bethesda magic when compared to something like Skyrim. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Fallout 4 is a bad game, but when you compare Fallout 4's quests to something like The Witcher's, with a diverse amount of quests and objectives, Fallout 4's kind of feel generic. Most of them consisted of go here, kill that, go there, find that object. Not to mention the rather flimsy and lackluster story. Although, to be fair, Bethesda games are usually more about creating your own story rather than following the main storyline, which Fallout 4 changes up a bit, since now your protagonist is no longer silent, but instead has a rather limited Mass Effect-style conversation tree, which sometimes leads you to say things you really didn't mean to say. However, things aren't all nuclear here. I will say that compared to Fallout 3, Fallout 4 is a vast improvement. The world looks a lot better, not just graphically, but color palette-wise as well. Character animations aren't nearly as stiff, and feel more natural, and the game as a whole feels a lot more streamlined, making it easier for older fans to get into the game, as well as new fans. Although I might say that some older fans may feel a tad alienated by the lack of choice and options. But that doesn't mean that it's still not fun to shoot a super mutant in the face with a missile. Fallout 4 also implemented a new crafting system, which is actually quite good. You can craft any kind of gun you want and customize it endlessly, pretty much, turning a once 10mm pistol into a 10mm pistol sniper rifle, or machine gun, semi-automatic, whatever you want. It really allows you to craft guns that fit your playstyle. However, they also added a settlement building mechanic into the game as well, and I'll say that it's rather frustrating and janky to say the least, and a feature I'd really wish they'd left bake in the oven a little bit longer, and release it as an expansion. But once you venture outside those settlements, you'll find that Fallout 4's world is still as big as ever, and full of tons of things to do. I'll be honest, I still haven't finished the story in this game, but I've clocked in well over 100 hours into the game. And while some fans may feel slightly alienated from Fallout 4's streamlined mechanics, and while compared to the other open world RPGs that came out this year, Fallout 4 isn't exactly the be-all end-all, it's still a good game nonetheless, and one I highly recommend, especially if you're looking for something fun. Because I'll be honest, Fallout 4 is wicked fun. This is one weird game, dealing with early forms of psychological therapy, self-discovery, and cats. And then there was that one time I was a tree. In Franbow, you play as Franbow, a little girl who witnesses her parents' death and is sent to an insane asylum to, upper cope. She's then given pills that allow her to see an alternate world. You have to use these pills to solve the point-and-click puzzles throughout your adventure. These pills constantly made me question what is real and what isn't, especially, the whole tree thing. I don't know what I was looking at there. If I had to knock Franbow for one thing, it's that, well, the story kind of stops making any sort of sense in the latter part, at least in my interpretation. Now granted, there could be some more deeper spiritual meaning or something like that, but towards the end I just kind of gave up trying to understand the story and just went with it. Because like I said, you become a tree at some point. And while the game can be hard to figure out story and puzzle-wise, it never felt impossible. It stuck a good balance of challenging, but doable. And while the story gets beyond weird and very confusing towards the end, it's a one-of-a-kind journey that'll make you think after you finish it. I'll be honest, I had very little interest in Goosebumps when I first heard of it. I thought it was going to be another movie tie-in, and like most movie tie-in games, it was going to be horrible. Until I heard WayForward would be making the game. Now say what you will about WayForward outside of their first-party IPs such as Shantae and the Mighty Switchfoot series, while not all their licensed work hits the mark, they at least try something new with every licensed game they make. Goosebumps is no exception to this rule. For Goosebumps, they decided to do a point-and-click adventure game, similar to those of the old LucasArts days. And for a first attempt, I'm happy to say, they did a fine job. The art style feels almost ripped straight from the covers of our favorite Goosebumps books, and the writing style invokes Stein himself. The only shortcoming I found with the game is that it can fall into the classic trap of many old-school point-and-clicks, where puzzle solutions aren't always easy to figure out, especially if you've never read an R.L. Stein book. But don't let that spook you off. If you enjoy kid-friendly horror, point-and-clicks, or just want to travel down 90 Kids Lane, I'd say give Goosebumps a shot. You might be surprised. This game is one of my favorite games to have the honor and privilege of playing this year. It is some of the most tense and rewarding boss fights I've experienced in a long time. To be clear, when I started playing this game, there were no achievements, which they only added at the tail end of my journey. The only thing that kept me going were the neat tidbits of real Norse mythology, and what amazing boss I was going to fight next. It really feels like you're fighting gods. The sense of scale in this game is done wonderfully. Whether it be against the gods or the environment, Odin really uses its camera to showcase just how small you are as the player in this vast world. A world, mind you, filled with multiple levels, all of which have unique mechanics to keep things fresh all the way through. While it didn't put me on the edge of my seat, I will say that Odin's story is rather unique, and did hold my interest a little bit throughout my journey. But if there's one thing I have to knock Odin back to Midgard for, it concerns the map system. See, the game gives you a map on the pause screen. The problem here is you are never given any sort of marker to indicate where you are. So this makes searching for hidden health pickups and god shrines unnecessarily tedious. That being said, the good heavily outweighs the bad in this game. It's one I think anyone who is looking for a unique and different experience should pick up and play. You won't walk away disappointed. In a world where it feels like only Telltale can do choose-your-own-adventure games right, Life is Strange was a breath of fresh air. The game centers around Max, an 18-year-old private schooler who magically receives the ability to travel through time. You'd think giving the player the ability to erase their choices by rewinding time would take any emotional consequence out of the game. And while I can sometimes agree with that, for the most part, I stuck with the choices I made. And the game actually makes good use of the mechanic, allowing you to go back into conversations and pick options previously not available. While this game might start off as a schoolyard drama, it quickly develops into something pretty deep, centered around bullying, selfish human desire, and sacrifice, leading to many twists and turns throughout the story that are hard to expect, taking the player through many emotional highs and lows. Although personally I found Life is Strange is at its best when Max is given the opportunity to sit down and reflect about the game's events, or her just being a young adult. The character writing and voice acting is so well done, you really get attached to the characters. A few minor complaints I have with the game is a slight lip-syncing problem and an annoying bottle-finding fetch quest. But if you want a break from Telltale's style of choose-your-own-adventure, you won't want to fast-forward over Life is Strange. Aurea is one of the most fun and frustrating experiences I've had this year. The game starts off strong and emotional, which I won't spoil here, although I will say that they do take some of that emotional punch away later in the game, but it overall doesn't detract too much from the story. You wouldn't think Meat Boy hardcore platforming and Metroid-style exploration would make for a fun combo, but for the most part, Ori pulls it off. It also helps that Ori takes a lot of the frustration out by allowing you to save anywhere. However, things get overly frustrating during the escape scenes, where if you die, you have to start all over again. This wouldn't be too bad, except for the fact that the stages are usually auto-scrolling, and with so much going on in the scene, it sometimes can be hard to figure out where to go. And if you make one wrong move, boop, you're dead. Also, if you're an OCD completionist like myself, you better make sure to never miss anything and explore everywhere you can, because you can't re-explore previously visited dungeons. Not only that, but once you beat the game, you can't play that file again. Literally, the game won't let you go back, so you can't get those last 2 items you missed, stopping you from getting 100% in the game! Although I have a feeling this bugbear will be resolved with the expansion Definitive Edition, coming sometime next year. I recommend if you're interested in Ori and the Blind Forest, you wait for said version, because it certainly is a game worth waiting for. Now, I'll admit, this is a first for me. I never thought a fan game from a TV show would be one of my most enjoyed games of the year. But Twilight Escape is a game that could stand on its own without the TV show it references. You play as a young unicorn named Twilight Sparkle, and you find yourself transported to a maze by a cursed book. And you, as the player, must puzzle solve your way out. But there's a dark force that will try to halt your progress. And this shade, through use of various sound effects and other ambient effects, created some of the most tense moments in the game as it chases you throughout the maze. The puzzles in the game offer up a decent enough challenge. Nothing too crazy or out of the world there, although I'll admit, through my playthrough, I tried some crazy things. I just never understood why the walls didn't tell me their secrets. But as I kept playing, I slowly became Twilight. I wanted to see her escape, and I wanted to conquer this maze, not only to assist her in freeing herself, but also to free myself from the maze and the walls. Sunlight. And as I left behind the dark catacombs, a feeling of great accomplishment washed over me. I felt like I'd really survived a horrific event. It felt really rewarding. Now, Twilight Escape isn't exactly a long game, however, I feel that actually plays to its advantage. It makes itself long enough to be enjoyable, but doesn't overstay its welcome. And honestly, I could see anyone enjoying this, regardless of if you're a fan of the source material or not. Whispering Willows is one of those games I'm glad I stumbled across. The game centers around a young girl named Elena as she explores Willow's mansion trying to find her missing father. First thing you'll notice is the unique hand-drawn art style, which in my opinion gives this game a very one-of-a-kind look. But pretty drawings mean nothing if the game's not unique enough to stand out. Luckily, Elena is no normal girl. She has the rather Danny Fenton ability to go ghost, which gives her the ability to talk to the gruesome ghostly inhabitants who roam the grounds. These ghostly gals and guys offer a splash of personality and intrigue to the game. It's also how you solve most of the puzzles in this adventure. However, I'm sad to say the story falls flat near the tail end of the adventure. However, the world of Whispering Willows absorbed me so much I was able to complete the game in around 2 hours. But I had fun the entire time I was playing. Although I might recommend you wait till it's on sale if you're interested. However, I personally can't wait to see what the minds of Nightlight Interactive come up with next. Well guys, those are my games of the year for 2015. Once again, if you guys have any games that you feel like should be on this list, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. But with 2016 on the horizon, I can't wait to see what other unique gaming experiences I have next. And I hope that all of you will join me on those experiences. So anyway, without further ado, I hope all of you have a happy new year, and I'll see you guys in 2016. Bye-bye!